And good morning, everybody. This is Grant with State of the Spark, and we have a phenomenal show. Today, for my morning cup of gratitude, love this cup of gratitude. Every time I see it, I think of things I'm grateful for. And today, what I'm grateful for is this. I am grateful for the fact that we can control, and by control, I mean improve, greatly improve our attitude and our circumstances at will. I'm supremely grateful also that this world is large and full of diverse people. And with diverse people, that means we can have diverse solutions to problems being solved and prayers being answered. I believe that prayers are answered through people. And I'm supremely grateful that prayers are answered through people. And last but not least, I am massively grateful today for our group of friends out there who can call us out. I posted yesterday in our Facebook group, the Goals and Gratitude group, and I posted and I asked, hey, what's been your best and worst coaching experiences? And Brittany pulled no punches. We went through a marriage counseling about years ago, and it was a horrible experience for everyone involved. And why I'm saying I'm grateful for this is I'm grateful that Adam and Brittany Welchel are still in our life. So I'm grateful for extraordinary people like that. But I'm grateful that we can flex and adjust. I'm grateful that they found the counseling and coaching they needed. I'm grateful that I found the coaching clients that I fit with and the coaching topic I fit with. So today I am extraordinarily grateful for this diverse world and our means to improve our situation at any moment. And here is to a cup of gratitude with you in the morning. Here we go. For today's show, I'm super pumped to actually talk about the world's most powerful memory trick. And we are going to do this on the show together today. We're going to do it live. And I'm going to prove that you can improve your memory at will live together today on the show. It's going to be super fun. We're actually going to post right up in here some words to memorize, and we're going to try to do that with rote memory, and then we're going to give you this memory trick, and we're actually going to improve your memory on the show. Let me actually write that in the comments here. We're actually going to improve your memory right on the show. Bam! That's going to happen, my friends. We're going to do that. But before we do that, we've got other news. And in this other news, I'm super pumped because we're going to cover how this one gentleman has prevented layoffs. And this guy's been in the news before for several items, but how we're going to how we're going to prevent layoffs at your company. And it's a simple solution. And then we're going to cover a rarely seen Colorado animal. And then last but not least, are there elves in Jupiter? You betcha. In other news, let's do this thing. So how to prevent layoffs. So recently a CEO was tasked with COVID. Their business was tanking because of COVID. And he basically announced to the company, we're losing about $1.5 million a month. Now back up. Who is this guy? This guy is Dan Price. And if that name, scratches at your brain a little bit, Dan Price is the CEO of Gravity Payments. And he made big news in 2015. They were a Silicon Valley startup, and he was making over $1 million a year himself. And he announced and really created a disruption in the marketplace because he took $1 million pay cut, took home $50,000 a year, and announced that no employee in his company would make less. Good morning, Rudd. I hope you're doing fantastic this morning, sir. Thanks for stopping in. So Dan Price made the announcement that he created a minimum wage of his own company, and the minimum wage in his company was $70,000 a year. And of course, this made crazy waves. Even the janitor was making $70,000 a year. And people said he cannot survive with this. Well, lo and behold, they started the company with a lot of money from Silicon Valley investment. They invested $70,000 a year, got quality people, and started growing right away. But lo and behold, in COVID, they actually started seeing a loss of $1.5 million a month. And he had a whole brand new creative solution for that. And it was simply this. He went to his staff and asked them and let them know, hey, We're going to be out of business in 3 months at $1.5 million a month. We only have about $4.5 million worth of cash reserves. We're going to be out of business. What should we do? And he is quoted as saying, I figured we waste a week's worth of time to learn it just wouldn't work. He was wrong. His team came back to him within the week and said, why don't we actually propose, instead of layoffs, anonymously volunteer pay cuts? And they were like, okay, who's going to volunteer for this? Well, lo and behold, they cut nearly $500,000 a month off of the salaries. Those pay cuts came, some people offered 5% of their pay being cut. Some people offered up to 100% of their pay being cut. Eventually, the company had to cap it, and they said, we're only going to let people forego their salary at 50% for the next 3 or 4 months. And they made up about $500,000 a month in salary that was going back to the company. And now they have a 6 to 12 month runway to get the company back on track. So I thought that was phenomenal. Let me give you the article for that. For the business people and the entrepreneurs and the coaches, this is a great story and anecdote on empowering your people. Now, I assume if you're paying $70,000 a year and you can afford to pay $70,000 a year, you can afford skilled, quality people who are able to give a lot of value. And he did that for nearly 5 years before he hit 2020, and then his employees were then able to give back into the company. Awesome, fantastic example of what's possible. It's not possible for the average small business owner, let's be real, but it is possible for this company. Great example. And our second piece of other news, a rarely seen Colorado animal is known as the ringtail coyote. I hope I'm saying that right. This is a rare animal, and when you think about Colorado animals, you don't often think about something called the ringtail coyote. You think about black bear, you think about elk, you think about moose. Adam and Brittany visited us in Colorado. It was fantastic for them to visit us in Colorado, and we were standing there, and a big old moose walked right by an SUV. It was huge. But you don't think of the miner's cat. The ringtail coyote is also known as the miner's cat because early gold miners would actually catch and train and domesticate the ringtail coyotes. Now, they're nocturnal, roughly 3 pounds. They're about 12 to 17 inches in length. But here's the creepy fun fact. You ready for a creepy fun fact? Nod, say yes, or give me a thumbs up if you are ready for a creepy fun fact. I'll give you a few seconds. Creepy fun fact, they can rotate their feet 180 degrees so that they can climb in any direction. Now, even though this animal is known as the miner's cat, it's actually not related to felines at all. It's more related to raccoons. And it's a very, very rare animal. And it popped its head up, I believe, in some burger joint, climbing through and grabbing burgers. You can learn more about the ringtail coyote right there. I think I have the article. Boom. And there's a little thumbnail. You can see it in the thumbnail right there of what those suckers look like. They're super fun, super cute, but don't be near. Just like a raccoon, they can get ferocious. And last but not least, in other news, are there elves in Jupiter? Maybe just sprites. Here we go. So, in about 2016, the Juno orbiter from NASA started orbiting Jupiter. Now, Jupiter's a big gaseous planet, and me and Marissa have been dying to actually open this up and research. What does it mean to be a gaseous planet? Do they have a mantle? Do they have a molten core? Maybe it's a plasma core. I'm super curious about what makes up a gaseous giant like Jupiter. Jupiter is made up of largely hydrogen. The air has a ton of hydrogen in it, as opposed to Earth, which has a ton of nitrogen. Why I am telling you this is that if you've ever seen video footage from the space station or from astronauts, and it looks like the clouds light up, we just assume, hey, there's lightning going on underneath. But these are known as sprites or elves. And these are basically when lightning alters the electrical field in the atmosphere above this storm. What you see is the lightning. We can see the lightning. But if you can actually see what we call heat lightning from the ground or from space, sprites or elves, they're when the electrical field actually stimulates the hydrogen or the nitrogen in the storm above the cloud, and it creates these things called sprites. Sprites are about, you can see them in the mesosphere from about 31 miles to 51 miles high, and they glow red, and you can see them. Elves are just bigger than that. And they run 46 to 65 miles above the storm. They kind of glow. Well, the Juno Jupiter orbiter has been circling Jupiter since 2016. 2016. And since then, they've seen about 11 of these bright flashes, only 11. Now, mind you, the Juno orbiter is small and it's a really big planet. Bear with us. But they have seen 11 of these. Now, here's the thing. They've caught these on the ultraviolet spectrum. To the chemistry nerds in the place, can anyone tell us why it's seen on the ultraviolet spectrum? I'll wait. That's all I got in me. It's because the air is hydrogen. When the lightning from these storms, the hypothesis goes, when the lightning from these storms is stimulating the electric field above the storm, it reacts differently with hydrogen than nitrogen and creates an ultraviolet spectrum sprite or elf. So the question, are there sprites or elves on Jupiter? The answer is, of course there are, my friends. There you have it. Other news. So, what is the world's best memory trick? Can you have the world's... Good morning, Jessica. I hope your coaching job is doing well. The first day, I think Jessica checked into her job as a coach for the first day yesterday. Congratulations on that job, and I hope you're doing fantastic. So I am unabashedly going to steal this approach from the author Jim Kwik. And Jim Kwik basically is a mind. He wants to create a world of healthy brains. And that's his mission in the world. And today we're going to talk about memory. How often have you been at a party or been introduced to a new business client and they introduce their name? And you're like, oh, thank you, Stacy. And you shake your hand and then you get to talking and you suddenly, immediately cannot remember their names. Happens all the time. How often have you been given just a sequence of things for your business or systems or processes, and weeks later when you're going, man, what was that process or I was doing or I couldn't remember this, your memory's a little weak. And the main reason Jim Kwik says from his book, Limitless, I wish I had it here. It's on the other bookshelf in the other room. I could wave it at you. In his book, Limitless, he says there are no such thing as bad memories, only weak memories, and we need to strengthen our memories. But the trouble with this is this. You guys have all been to school, I hope. And quite often, you've been taught to memorize with rote memory. We'll get there in just a second and cover this. So Jim Kwik actually recounts the story of the author of the book Moonwalking with Einstein. I've been through the book. I haven't read the whole thing. I've heard the story a dozen times. For those who haven't heard the story, in short, Moonwalking with Einstein was written by a journalist, and the journalist recounts the story of when he attended the World Memorization Games. And he wanted to see how these average people could have these extraordinary memories. Well, lo and behold, they told him the secret. It's basically an open secret. They taught him the secret of memorization. And he thought that this was so amazing that he went. Jessica says, excellent topic this morning. Thank you, Jessica. I really appreciate it. Memory is so important when it comes to memorizing names, business processes, all kinds of stuff, and just expanding your memory so that passively, because remember, your unconscious mind regurgitates, that's what's in your brain, and that's what's in your brain can then share with the world and even recall unconsciously what you've memorized. If you can improve your memory, you can basically improve not only your active RAM, but also your hard drive in general. So with Moonwalking with Einstein, this journalist went to the World Games. They showed him his secrets, and he actually competed the following year and won the World Memorization Games. Just an average Joe like you or me. So Jim Kwik recounts this story, and then he recounts a story that I've known for some years about mind palaces. Now, again, you've probably heard this anecdote as well. And mind palaces came anecdotally from an ancient Greek who was hosting dinner. And he had his home, which is, Greek colonnades, and they were dining, and he could, he had friends around the table. And the story goes that Athena visited the host and she beckoned him outside. And he says he went to go visit Athena outside, and she basically said, I'm saving your life. And suddenly his home collapsed and killed everyone at dinner. And when the community came and the authorities came and they asked, hey, who was at dinner? Who was even there? So we know to notify their families and to take care of their affairs. And he closed his eyes and he thought of his dinner table and went around the dinner table and was able to recite everyone's name. Now, the Greeks were famously known for their oration and their oratory, of course, but this created the idea of the Mind Palace. Now, the Mind Palace, if you're a fan of the BBC's version of Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch, I am a Benedict Cumberbatch. I love Benedict Cumberbatch and I love Sherlock Holmes. And they played up to his Mind Palace and the case of the Mind Palace. We'll get into that in a second. Jim Quick combines what he learned from moonwalking with Einstein and what we learned from Mind Palaces, and then actually puts these together in his own Jim Quick way. And we're going to cover that. So I want to show you the problem with memory today. Can I do that? Is that okay? Let's actually do this very quickly. So bear with me. I got some things to click. We're going to do this. And you should see 10 words right here. And these 10 words are proposed. This comes up in Limitless as well. Any 10 words. And I'm going to ask you to memorize these words. Cup, computer, phone, pen, camera. I can't compete because I've got these on my screen as well. Book, board, door, pillow, plant. And I'm going to ask you to memorize these. Cup, computer, phone, pen, camera, book, board, door, pillow, plant. And we're just going to do this very quickly. Can you remember these words? It's difficult. And in grade school or all through school, we're taught to memorize things. Let's bring them up again. Cup, computer, phone, pen, camera, book, board, door, pillow, plant. And it's a lot of pressure right now. You're watching me talk. So I encourage you to play this video back after we've gone live. Play this video back and actually play this game with me. Look at this list. Try to memorize it. And I'm going to pull it away. Pause here and see if you can't recite those 10 words. Now I'm going to go back here. And we're going to move forward because we're going to come back to this overlay here in a second. We're going to come back to this list of words. So I want you to watch this through and watch it later and pause it because you're actually going to be able to improve your memory from this. But how you would approach this normally is you try to say them over and over again in order or reverse order. Listen. Here's what doesn't work about this in school. Here's what doesn't work about this in memorization. Here's what doesn't work about this in social situations when you're introduced to people. Rote memorization, especially in your short-term memory, does not work. Nearly all people polled at a university poll who were coming out of an exam, nearly 75% of them who were interviewed 15 minutes after the test could not answer the same exact questions. They basically, the reason so many people have so much anxiety when it comes to tests is they try to keep this list, like we just did the list, this list of memorized items in the forefront of their brain. They're trying to keep it in the forefront of their brain, and they loop and loop and loop and loop and loop. And as soon as they take the test, it leaves their short-term memory. 15 minutes later, 75% of the people could not recite the material. 72 hours later, 3 days later, 95% of all people could not tell you anything that was on the test. This is the problem with rote memorization. And the solution to memorizing people's names, the solution to memorizing better business processes, book, board, pen, computer, camera, plant, cup, pillow. That's all I got. Jessica is such a good sport. She says, book, board, pen, computer, camera, cup, pillow. That's all she got. Sweat face. And then let's actually look real quick. Cup, computer, phone, pen, camera, book, board, door, pillow, plant. Nice try, Jessica. I love it. So the solution to all of this, I contend, is combining mind palaces with story memorization. And this is from Jim Quick. So I'll give you a really a three-part structure here. So first and foremost, I recommend you build a mind palace. Number one, build a mind palace. And what a mind palace is, it's a place in your mind that is so memorized that it is memorized in your long-term memory. Now, here are a few quick principles on mind palaces, and then I'll share you about mine. They recommend that you have a location that you go to actually regularly, consistently, and it's anchored in your long-term memory. You could it's your childhood home or the home you've lived in longest. They recommend it be an actual location because we memorize geographies. We have been memorizing geographies for as long as we have had human history and prehistory. We recognize and remember things geospatially. We remember things geographically. So having an actual place. Now, in our home right now, we've got about 4 or 5 rooms, so this would work out really well. But because I've been doing this for years, and when I started this, I did not actually live in a consistent place. I was nomadic. So when I started, I was doing the nomad living. I created an entire mind palace mentally first. And I'll describe mine. I'll give you the gift of sharing mine in a second. But they recommend you go into this room and kind of clockwise or counterclockwise, don't zigzag around the room, in a normal pattern through the room, come up with 5 locations. One could be a chair, a nightstand, a key ring rack, on top of the television set, on a desk, on a bookshelf. Think of your room and go around the room and memorize this space. It shouldn't be cluttered rooms. Some people I know who compete, they'll actually clean out their household homes aside of furniture. They'll clear out everything but furniture, and they'll walk through their room over and over again, walk through the room and memorize 5 locations. And then what they encourage for this memorization trick of building a mind palace, and basically you're looking for the 5 locations that are always there. The nightstand should always be there. The chair should always be there. You get it. Then you go to the next room. So if you have a 3-2, that's 5 rooms. You could go through every room in the house that you're consistently going through. There's 5 rooms. Go through the rooms, the bathrooms, and have 5 locations on each of them. Some people recommend that you just, in your mind, recreate the same room. So if you have 5 things to memorize, you've got 1 room. In your short-term memory, you can place the things you're supposed to memorize on these locations and see them back and forth. So first off, though, before we get into that, let's just focus on building the mind palace. So that's how you're going to use your mind palace. If you have 10 things to memorize, you could either repeat the room or you could go to the second room. If you've got 25 things to memorize, you've got a whole house. And then if you've got 50 things to memorize, you can now duplicate the homes and walk through them. Now, what is going on here? Your memory, your long-term memory, is largely geospatial outside of you. So memorizing your home helps with attaching short-term memory items to long-term memory items. So having and repeating and memorizing your home with the 5 places in each room kind of expands locations you could store things in memory. So I've done this, and like I said, I've done this with my own mental mind palace, and I could recite it one day. It's basically like a cloud, and I walk up a short stair steps, and I run my hand across the banister, and this is me visualizing going from my outer world to my inner world. And as I do this, it shuts down my audio cortex and my visual cortex and my kinesthetic cortex and stimulates my visual cortex. And I can start to imagine it now. And then I go around the room counterclockwise from right, and I loop around the room, and there's a certain painting of me and Marissa's, a photo of me and Marissa's first trip, and it's an actual photo we have. And I have different stations around this room, and it's a whole panel of our first cross-country trips, and there's like a board with Christmas lights on it that light up where we went. And as I go through the room stimulates when I do this in meditation, I go deep, and I'm not talking like this, and I'm not listening to the noises of the room. And so I go into my deep imagination state. And then I've got 1, 2, 3 rooms in there that have multiple locations. I've memorized a lot of my early clients. I memorized the books that have made the most amount of impact to me and the bullets from those books. I've memorized basically how to build an earthship. I memorized kind of all the ins and outs of the major systems in that, if I can go deep into my meditative memory. And so I have this mind palace that I can go to anywhere. And then I have a room that's just chaotic, but there's things in that room that I love to remember. And then there's a couch and a projector in that room. This is how you build a mind palace. I recommend you don't do as chaotic as I am, and you don't build it from scratch. I recommend you actually build your mind palace and memorize your home. Memorize your living room with 5 stations, your bedroom with 5 stations, your bathroom with 5 stations. And now you've got places anchored. Do this over and over again. And this is a lifelong pursuit of memorizing this. The goal is to have a mind palace that has empty stations, and it's so anchored in your long-term memory. The smells, the textures, the touch. Do this over and over again. Do it physically. Then sit down and meditate and imagine it. And do it physically again. And then sit down and imagine it. And do it physically again and repeat weekly until the mind palace has been built. And you can imagine this room with 5 stations, and then the other rooms and their 5 stations, and you have this memorized over and over again. This is the repeat. This is the only rote work you do, but it's like for life. And I repeat mine daily and weekly, and I imagine mine daily and weekly. That's step 1, build a mind palace. Step 2, visualize your items in story form. Let's look at this. I'm going to pull up this graphic. So the story memorization is this. You've got these: cup, computer, phone, pen, camera, book, board, door, pillow, plant. Imagine this happens in story form. We're going to ignore the mind palace for a second and imagine that the cup is sitting on the computer. The computer is next to the phone. The phone is next to the pen. The pen looks like the camera. The camera is next to the book. The book is falling off the board. The board collapses into the door. The door, thankfully, lands safely on the pillow. And the pillow bumps the plant. Come up with like a mousetrap of a story of what's going on with these things. Maybe you pick up your cup and you spill it on your computer. And then your computer explodes and knocks the phone. And the phone, the receiver falls out. When we used to have receivers, the receiver, actually, let's picture the computer blowing up. It throws your phone. The phone then knocks the pen. The ink from the pen covers up the camera. You get the idea. Anytime you have to remember something, especially a long series of things, you're going to actually do this and imagine these into a story. So here's what I want to do. This is an interactive show today. When this show is over, if you watch this later, I want you to pause right here. I'm going to leave this up for just 2 or 3 seconds. And I want you to pause when I tell you to and actually create a visual story. Okay? So I'm just going to pause for a few seconds. And that is when you should pause this video later and actually imagine a series of things occurring in this. So let's do this. Pause the video now. Okay, I hope you did this. So I'm going to remove the overlay. Let's hide it. And now I want you to pause the video and see if you can't recite it from story form. Pause now. Okay, I hope you did this with me. I hope you did this after the show. And I guarantee you would have memorized far more thinking of these things in story form than you would have in just rote memory. Now, here's where I'm going to put these together. And here's why this matters. Here's why story matters. It's called the Baker problem. Jim Quick features it in his book, but this is a well-known problem, and it's this. You introduce to someone and their last name is Baker, and then the conversation goes on and you forget. But you meet someone, forget their name, but they tell you this person is a Baker. And you will remember their job like that because you remember texture. Maybe there's this extra bakery-ness about the person. Maybe there's elements. You picture flour floating through the air, and you can remember now that this person was a baker. It's called the capital B, Baker, lowercase b, Baker problem. And this is what we know as mnemonic devices. And this is why the story memorization works so well with people. Don't just remember these words. Actually picture the cup falling on the computer and it exploding and throwing the phone knocking the pen and the pen ink covering up the camera and then the camera snapping a photo of the book which falls down the board. You get it. If you can come up with a story for these things, it's not just mnemonic devices. His name is Baker. I'm imagining him as a baker. It's actually coming up with a story because there's a visual memory of feeling about these things that you already have anchored. And then you could probably memorize these things much more easily. Now, here's where you put number 1, building a mind palace, and number 2, visualizing a story of the items together. You have this story. Now, go to your mind palace and picture this story occurring in the locations. If you have your mind palace and it starts on the cup starts on, boop, the cup starts on the couch, and then that falls on the computer, which is on the nightstand, and so forth. You have a story that is already pretty well memorized. And you would only combine these if you're struggling to really remember as many things as you need to combine them. So you could go from the story, and that might be all you need. But if you really need to anchor it a day later or a half a day later, it can supremely help if you tell the story through the 5 locations of your room. And then since there's 10 items, then it moves to the next room of those items. And this little mousetrap story you've got going on combines with your mind palace, and you should be able to memorize. Grant, when am I going to use this? I do public speaking all the time. Well, not in 2020, but before 2020, we did public speaking all the time. And I would write out a very long, fully written speech or talk or presentation. I write everything out. But then I learned this trick because there's a rule of 5s when it comes to presentations and slides. No slide should have more than 5 sentences on it. Those 5 sentences should have no more than 5 words on it. Why? Because it's just meant to be backdrop, and it's supposed to trigger you to be able to talk about the topic ad infinitum. You should only be talking about stuff you know about, and you just need triggers. And so the presentation shouldn't be the presentation. You're the presentation. This is the backdrop. I got this from slides. So I would write this out, and then I would cut all the these, thises, ands, that's, all the pronouns. I'd get rid of them. All the articles, I get rid of them. And then all I'm left with is nouns and verbs. And then I'd start trimming verbs so that all I'm left with is nouns. And now that I have nouns, I can actually recite this thing. So basically, I took a fully written thing and shrunk it down. That's what you're doing when you memorize for presentations. So maybe you're a sales rep as Jessica, or a coaching rep that Jessica is now. Maybe you do speaking events. I know Rut Patel was watching a moment ago. Maybe he's pitching clients and he wants to memorize his pitch. You can actually take large volumes of data like this and tell a story with it, and then put them in your mind palace so that you're always ready to present. That's a real world application. If you're at a networking event and you're really trying to memorize everyone's names, you can take a minute, shake their hand, come up with a mnemonic device, but then place them in your mind palace so you can remember them later. So this is the most powerful memorization tool in the world. I hope you actually followed my instructions and pause this video later when you watched it later as I instructed you to. And I want to hear in the comments later, of course, this is live. I want to hear in the comments later how this went for you and if you could actually memorize things better. That's how we do it as a speaker. That's how we do it as a networker. That's how I do it when I do it in sales. And I use these tools different times. I don't necessarily do it the same way every time, but I have these tools to pull from to put together a superpower Voltron version of memorization. And last but not least, once you have, whether it's your story memorization, once you have your room memorization, if you placed items there to memorize, or once you've combined them, say it to yourself forward and backward to build confidence in it. And as you say it forward and backward, and then check against the list, forward and backward, check against the list, you'll eventually trust that it's moved away from your short-term memory and anchored more into your long-term memory for a little bit longer. And then you can trust yourself to carry that information and to lower your anxiety about your presentation, about your networking event, whatever it is, and know that you can pull it from recall at any time. Now, order does matter, especially if you have a system like MSPBA. 5 items, 5 locations. That's the Spark Freedom Framework that we came up with for how to structure your business. MSPBA. And then each one of those has 5 items, 5 systems. And this is how you know how to build your business at any time. That's another reason we have these acronyms and frameworks so that you can easily recall them when you're in the middle of business. So there you have it, my beautiful friends. I hope this was useful. I hope it was a fun little tool. By all means, capture it, pause this video later, replay it to yourself, save it somewhere because I think it's going to be powerful for you. Remember, if you need any help out there, if you have any questions out there, reach out to us at stateofthespark.com. But really, join us at the Facebook Goals and Gratitude group. It's growing all the time. I think we're up to 360 members now. Ask your questions there. Tell us how you're doing there. And let me know. Give me feedback. Map BA. What are you talking about? Lisa Welsh. Map BAMS. What are you talking about, my friend? By all means, visit the Facebook Goals and Gratitude group. Join us over there. We're answering questions. Oh, MSPBA. There you go, Lisa Welsh. MSPBA. There we go, my dear. I got lost there for a second. Join us at the Facebook Goals and Gratitude group where we're igniting lives of explosive significance. Thank you so much for being with us today. Remember the mission, igniting lives of explosive significance, starting with your own. Have a great day.